What's up, guys? Welcome to Among the Fence, my YouTube channel writing music reviews. My name is Aaron, and today I'm going to be going over my top 10 albums of 2021. There was so much good stuff that was released this year. It was so hard to compile it all down to just 10 items. So if I missed something that happened to be your favorite album or whatever, I apologize. And to be completely honest, a lot of the stuff on this list can kind of be interchanged with some of the things that's going to be on the honorable mentions list as well. It all kind of depends on what mood I'm in, I guess. And also, if your favorite album of the year happened to be EP, like Lorna Shore or like Moths to the Flames or Invent Animate, then it will not be on this list because it's strictly just for albums, not EPs. So I apologize if your favorite deathcore, Lorna Shore, Hellfire song didn't make it on the list. I'm sorry. Starting off the list at number 10 is Ice9 Kills, Welcome to Horrorwood. This is one of those albums that it all depends on what kind of mood I'm in. This one could be interchanged with some of the stuff that's on the honorable mentions. I really love the gimmick, but it does kind of bore me sometimes. Some of the things on this album are kind of predictable, but there's some very clever moments on this that are just absolutely fantastic. Some of my favorite songs are Assault and Batteries, Take Your Pick. I love the music videos that go along with this. Just the storyline that they did where it's like they're trying to catch this killer, and then the song that's based on Psycho is fantastic as well. All the little just hidden gems throughout this entire album with like the spoken word stuff or like little sound bites of them just talking about how like, oh, Ice9 Kills really came into their own with the Silver Scream, and it's just very silly, very playful. I love the horror aspect to it. They did a good job at bringing it all to life musically, and I really appreciate what they did in this because I didn't really like Ice9 Kills that much, even after listening to the Silver Scream 1. I was like, it's kind of whatever. But Assault and Batteries really got me into this album. And honestly, there wasn't really a bad song on it. But like I said, there are some moments when their like gimmick thing kind of does become a little old. Taking the number 9 spot is Phineas with The Fire Itself. This is the epitome of metalcore. If you look up metalcore in the dictionary, you will see a picture of this album. It's got fantastic riffs, amazing vocals. The lyrics are really good, but it can become a little monotonous just because of the metalcore box that it's placed itself in. It sounds like probably the best metalcore album that came out in like, I don't know, 2009 or something like that, which is better production. But it's just, I loved every second of this. It's phenomenal. I love all the riffs. I love the sounds. I love everything. The drum work is fantastic. The lyrics, like I said, are great. This is, yeah, probably the best metalcore album of 2021 at least. Taking the number 8 spot is Spiritbox, Eternal Blue. I know a lot of people are going to be throwing a fit because this is not album of the year, and I am sorry, but this song does have some really good bangers like Circle With Me, Secret Garden are beautiful songs. In fact, those are some of my favorite songs that came out this year. The only song that I wasn't really into was probably Yellow Jacket, which happens to be a lot of people's favorites, but the rest are phenomenal. I mean, Courtney has fantastic clean vocals and her distorted sound is great. The musical writing throughout this entire thing is great. I love the variety within the songs that you get and the atmosphere that they bring to it. For having such a really hard time getting this album out and then getting to tour, the anticipation of this album was just tremendous. We couldn't wait for it. And then went on tour with Limp Bizkit. That got canceled. The whole pandemic thing made it hard for them to record. And it was, everything in the world was against this band. But they got it out and they fully delivered. This is a fantastic album. Coming in at number 7 is Cannibal Corpse, Violence Unimagined. This is probably the album that most people wouldn't expect to be on my list, but I just love everything about this album. I've been sitting around trying to figure out the riffs on it on my guitar. I love everything about it. You can't really go wrong with Cannibal Corpse either. And saying that, this is probably my favorite album out of their 15 albums that they've released. I mean, the riffs are brutal. The vocals are as fierce as ever. My favorite songs are Ritual Annihilation, Follow the Blood, Cerements of the Flame. But honestly, this is basically like top tier death metal at its finest. And they deliver. So the lyrics are just nasty and brutal. This is everything I want from Cannibal Corpse. And they gave it to me. I just wanted something that was just downright dirty and gross. And this is it. And they did a great job. Number 6 is Rivers N Nil The Work. This one was really hard for me to put this low on the list because Rivers N Nil is one of my favorite bands and The Work is a phenomenal album. And this is probably one of the most polarizing albums that came out this year, I feel like, just because a lot of people were expecting Owls 2. And if they didn't get that, they probably hated this album. But as far as this album's concerned, were they perfecting like just the heaviness and aggression and riff writing in Where Owls Know My Name? I would say The Work, they perfected the progressive sound and the atmosphere and just songwriting in general. I mean, the concept of this album is executed perfectly. It couldn't have been any better with songs like Clean and Terrestria 4, and which has its own little Easter eggs in it. But every song in here has some like little throwback stuff to it. There's more saxophone in there. There's tons of Pink Floyd references, which is probably one of the main reasons why I love this album so much. They just managed to not only tell the story lyrically, but really just engulf you in the emotion of what is going on in the concept with just the sound of their music alone. And it's just, yeah, it's basically a masterpiece concept album. Number 5 is Silent Planet's Iridescent. This is probably going to make a lot more people upset because this is probably a lot of people's number ones. This is one of the heaviest and most lyrically provoking albums of the year, I'd say. If it had more spoken word and kind of weird stuff that their last albums had, it might be pushed up closer to number 1 for me, maybe even number 1. But that doesn't take away from just how phenomenal of a vocalist Garrett Russell is. He's probably the most versatile vocalist in metalcore right now. He gets so low and he can be so dynamic and he can clean up his vocals and dirty them just within words. It's just so good. And the songs in here are placed really well as well, with songs like Trilogy, which was the first song that came out over a year ago, is phenomenal, and then Iridescence, The Sound of Sleep. There's so many great songs on this album, and they flow into each other so well. The only issue I really had with it, other than the spoken word thing, is they do become a little bit predictable after a while, just within the metalcore genre itself. But it still doesn't stop it from being one of the best albums there is right now. Coming in number 4 is Trivium, In the Court of the Dragon. This is another one that everybody's probably going to be sad that I didn't put number 1, but this is probably like the best drum work I've heard from Trivium in, I don't know, maybe 10 years. And Matt's distorted vocals are so freaking aggressive and they're so fierce. While I don't really like his clean singing all that much, admittedly, they're still pretty solid, and his vocal tone is just, I don't know, I never really cared for it all that much, but it's still on par with a lot of stuff he's done in the past. The guitar solos and vocal effects, they're great, but the vocal effects are a little bit too much sometimes, and the effects on the guitar solos are just kind of alright. But I found that to be more of a personal take. This is probably like their best work that they've done in a while. I liked What the Dead Men Say. It was new, it was a good evolution for them, but I feel like this is a great evolution of their new sound mixed with some of their old stuff. Like, this is some of the best stuff we've heard since Shogun, probably. And my favorite song off of this is easily Feast of Fire, and also the title track song is phenomenal. It was very hard for me not to put this as number 1. Number 3 is Every Time I Die, Radical. This has got to be the band's peak. I can't think of anything else that they've done that I like more than this. It's so creative, and it brings such a fresh sound to this genre, and they do it so well because I feel like they're not afraid to try new things because they're not really taking themselves too seriously. They're just out there having fun, and you can really feel that. It doesn't seem like they're trying too hard either. It's not like they sat down and they're like, we need to come up with something new. We need to do something fresh for our sound. We need to be more creative. No, they just have this sound in their heads that they want to get out, and they're so good at producing that with their instruments. And while the riffs are just relentless and the drum work is practically flawless, I will say that my favorite part of this entire record are the vocals. They're so dynamic, they're in your face, they're all over the place. It just, you can't help but want to sing along with them. This is another one that was almost impossible for me not to put at number 1. Second place is Born of Osiris, Angel or Alien. This album put Born of Osiris back on the map for me, personally. I haven't really been into them for just about 10 years almost, but this album is just pure gold. In fact, when I was trying to review it, it was really hard. I had to keep going back and re-listening to songs just because I got so lost in it. It was really hard for me to actually focus on the task at hand. And the production is crystal clear. The melodies sound fresh, while at the same time when you hear it, you're like, that's definitely Born of Osiris. The EDM sections catch you off guard, but still just blends in with the songs perfectly. The vocals are absolutely addicting, and the sax solos are beautiful. The closing track Shadow Morning is probably my second favorite song that was released throughout this entire year. And also the messages throughout all these songs are beautiful as well, about believing in yourself and things like that. It's just, this is great. This is a beautiful album. And before I get to my album of the year, I got some honorable mentions. And I feel like a lot of these albums can be interchangeable with almost anything on this list from 7 to 10, give or take. The first one is Whitechapel Kin. It really explored a different sound, kind of toolish in ways, but it's more based on just straight up death metal and the storytelling. Ginger Wallflowers, it was really hard for me to pick Spiritbox over this, but I did go back to Spiritbox a lot more. But I will admit that just the musical capabilities are just so much better on Wallflowers. And then there's Between the Buried and Me, Colors 2. Wasn't that big of a fan of this album, just because of how incredibly long it was and drawn out. Some of the songs didn't really feel like they needed to be as long as they were, but it's just a flawlessly written concept album that just goes on, and there's so many different sections to it, and there's just so much to tear apart in this album because there's so many layers to it. Then there's also Darko, the self-titled album, which is produced by Tom Barber and Baby J, or Babyface J, who used to be the drummer for Amir, but now he's on Spite. This album, as far as deathcore goes, this is probably my favorite deathcore album of the year. It's so dynamic, so much emotion. Tom Barber freaking brings it, and he's got so many good vocal features from Ben Durr. This is one of the most listened to deathcore albums I've had throughout the entire year, other than Brand of Sacrifice, Lifeblood. I didn't do a review on this one. I really wanted to. I just never got around to it. I did a review on the song Lifeblood, but even though I didn't mention it, this album definitely deserves a mention in the top 10 list. And then Sleep Token, This Place Will Become Your Tomb. So before I mentioned that Born of Osiris had like the second place for Song of the Year, while This Is the Love You Want by Sleep Token is definitely Song of the Year. That song is so perfect in every single way in terms of emotion, build-up, lyrics, music. Everything about that song is perfect. And while I wasn't really that in love with the album, mostly because of all of its different vocal stuff they got going on in terms of effects and all that, it is still a phenomenal album nonetheless. And taking the #1 spot for Album of the Year is Architects, For Those That Wish to Exist. This is the most beautifully, flawlessly, I'm just kidding. I can't even take myself seriously with talking about that album. The real #1 spot Album of the Year goes to Era, the self-titled album. Everything I said about Born of Osiris in terms of melody, songwriting, all of that, you could just take it and times it by 2. That's how great this album is. It's insanely creative when it comes to melodies and riffs. It's got beautiful, clean vocals from Jesse, and they mix so well with JT's distorted vocals. Not to mention, we also get some clean singing from JT on this album as well. The songwriting is super progressive, and songs just flow so well into all of them, and they have super relative subjects in it. Everything in this is great. The metaphors are beautiful. Songs like Divisionary and Lunar Halo, which happens to be my favorite song off of the album. I gave this album a 9.7 out of 10 when I reviewed it, and believe it or not, it still continues to grow on me. It is just absolute perfection. The band has outdone themselves. This is a lot of Era fans' favorite album from the band, a lot of other people's album of the year, and I can't get enough of it. All right, guys, that is it for my album of the year list. Like I said, it's very hard to do this. I was just gonna keep it to maybe 5 albums because that would be really easy, because honestly 6 through 10 was very hard to get down. And like I said earlier, any of the stuff on the honorable mentions can kind of be interchanged with most of the stuff from like 7 through 10 on this list. It all depends on like my mood as it changes, even just week to week. Some of the stuff I like more than others. But leave a comment below letting me know what your favorite albums or even your album of the year is. Also leave a comment letting me know what I should review next. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you want to help support me and my channel, you don't want to miss out on any of my future stuff, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell icon. I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for watching my videos. Had a great year with some fantastic music. I hope you guys had a good time watching my reviews. Hopefully I didn't make you guys too mad throughout the year on some of my hotter takes on some of the better albums that came out. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your day or night whenever you happen to be watching this. And I will talk to you guys next time.